Okay, so hi everyone, welcome. I see people keep joining, so I'll start with a quick introduction. So my name is Guy. I'm working on the web platform of Excel. We call it Excel Online, part of Office 365 in Microsoft. And I'm gonna give you a quick introduction to JavaScript core concepts and best practices. A bit of who this session is meant for. So if you're like a beginner in web development or in JavaScript, or you want to refresh your memory about the concepts that we're gonna go through here, you're welcome to join. I'm gonna try to make it an interactive session. I'm gonna open. I'm gonna have like open questions for you, and I hope you're gonna answer. But I know there is a delay in the live streaming, so we might skip it and then just go for questions and answers myself. But I will. You are always free to. We have the live event Q&A that you welcome to publish questions. And I hope I'm gonna go through all of them. And you're also welcome to add me on LinkedIn, Guy Yom Tov, and ask any further questions that you might have. So I want to start with a quick history lesson about JavaScript. So JavaScript originally named Mocha, and later in the early 90s, the name was changed to LiveScript, and in the later 90s, it was changed to JavaScript. And many people think that there is a connection between Java and JavaScript. But in fact, the only relationship between Java and JavaScript is that Netscape, who owned JavaScript, and Sun, who owned Java, they had a licensing agreement, and they wanted like developers to work with Java and JavaScript together. So they will have Java in the server side and JavaScript in the client side. And that's the only connection we have to Java, right? And later on, in the later 90s, they wanted to standardize the language. And there is a standardization international organization called ECMA. And at that time, when they submitted it, they didn't want to use the name JavaScript. This is why you, in many cases, will see something called ECMAScript. And ECMAScript is actually JavaScript, which is standardized. So it's pretty much the same. If you see ES, right, we have ES6, which is the recent one. And later then Microsoft joined to the browser war, and they introduced JScript, which is the Microsoft ECMAScript implementation. And then we had the browser war, right? Of Explorer, Microsoft Explorer pretty much took the entire industry. Later, Mozilla introduced Firefox, and then in 2008, Google introduced Chrome with the V8 engine. And today, Microsoft has a new browser, and it's all based on the standardized way of JavaScript, which is called ECMAScript. So that's a quick introduction that I thought you should know. So what we have for today, we have pretty much the core concept that every JavaScript developer should know. We're going to start with scope. We're going to go to IFI, which is immediately invoked function expressions. What is hoisting? A big concept in JavaScript. And what does it mean? Later we'll go to the differences between var, let, and const, which was introduced in ES6. A big question in JavaScript is, what is this? When I write this dot, what does it mean? And we will go over this. And also on prototypes and closures. There are many other subjects that many people that are also important in JavaScript, like object-oriented and async promises and the browser, how the browser work, event loop and stuff like that. And we might do it in later sessions, but these the top ones are the ones that we're going to cover today. So I know that we have people here for different countries, from different scopes and from different levels. If you feel like you need some reinforcement in this and the subject we have today, so let's go. And also feel free to ask questions in the Q&A. So the first thing is a scope. What is a scope? So scope exists in many languages. In JavaScript, it's where the variables that you declared are accessible. And we have two kinds of scopes. We have the local or the function scope, and we have the global scope. And when I'm creating a variable, right, and I just do it in a plain JavaScript, so it's gonna be in the global scope. And since I work in Office, in many of my examples I use Office applications. So here you can see var app equals Excel. So this one is in the global scope. It's available anywhere inside functions and like anywhere in the code, it's gonna be accessible. In the second example, we have a var app, which is only local and only exists inside the function scope, right? So when I did var app equals Word, it actually overrides the app of Excel, and inside the function only, it's gonna be existing as Word. It doesn't affect the global scope since it's inside the function. And in my function too, we have a weird example of assigning a second app equals one node, but we didn't declare it anywhere, right? And in this case, JavaScript gonna what it's gonna do, it's gonna search for declaration of the variable. So it's gonna say, okay, I see here a second app equals one node, and I don't see it was declared in my function too. Maybe I'll go to the global scope. Then it goes to the global scope and it searches for second app, and it doesn't find it as well. And once it reaches the global scope, it finishes. It says, all right, it's probably a mistake or something like that, but I'm gonna declare the second app in the global scope, and I'm gonna make it a global variable. And this is like default behavior of JavaScript. When you assign something to a variable that wasn't declared, it's gonna go up the chain, it's gonna look and up to the global scope, and if it can't find it, it's gonna declare it there. And this brings me to something called strict mode. In many JavaScript files, you're gonna see, even if you go to google.com, microsoft.com, whatever, and you're gonna like look inside the source code, you're gonna see that in many of the JavaScript files, you're gonna see the use strict phrase in like the start of the file. And what it means, it's the use strict was introduced to actually prevent these kinds of like mistakes that developers could make. And if we do this with the second app, while we have the use strict, we're gonna the JavaScript is gonna fail, and we're gonna have an error that a variable was not declared. So actually, the use strict is very common. It's almost used entirely, and it has other effects as well. But when we talk about scope perspective, so it prevents these kinds of errors. Feel free if you have any questions. All right. And I'm gonna start with a pop quiz. I'm not sure how it's gonna work. I'm gonna publish a question, and I'm wondering if you're gonna tell me if you can think for a few seconds what's gonna be printed on the console. So we have here var app equals Excel. We have a function, and we have a function inside the function. And then what we do, we call my function, we printing app and second app, and then we call my function too. So I'm gonna give it a chance to see how it goes with the delay of the event stream, and a few seconds if you want to type what do you think gonna be printed on the console. All right, so after you had few seconds, I think to think about it. So I'm gonna say what the answer here. So actually, what's happening is we call my function, right? And it since we have var app equals word, it doesn't affect, as we said, on the global scope. So when we print app here, it's gonna print Excel. And then when we try to print second app, so we're gonna see the same thing that I showed in the first example, is the second app was declared in my function too when we called it here, and it didn't find it in my function too. It didn't find it in my function. It didn't find it in the global scope, and then it declared it in the global scope. So second app gonna print one note, and my function too is actually, as you can see, it was declared inside my function. And as we said, it's only in my function scope. So when I'm trying to call my function 2 in the global scope, it's gonna say that my function 2 is not defined. All right, and feel free to, as I said, feel free to ask any questions that you want. The next thing is named function. So what is a named function? You know how when you sometimes debug things, or in many cases, if you have like production web application, and then you log errors and stuff like that, you see many anonymous functions, right? And it's really hard to understand what is this anonymous function. And in many cases, you have many anonymous functions inside the function, and you can't really tell which one is which. This is why we use named function. So here we can see two things. We have a function expression, and we have named function expression. So what is a function expression, right? A function expression is when you assign a function to a variable, right? You don't just start function something. You start it with var x equals function, and this is again expressions. But what is the difference between the right and the left example? And you're gonna see in the right example, after the function, I put a name, myself, and on the left side I didn't. So if I would debug, if I would have an error inside call myself, and I would debug it and put a breakpoint and see the call stack, I would see call myself as an anonymous function, because I put inside myself call myself, I put a function, and call myself is just the name of the variable that holds the function. The function itself doesn't have a name. But if you look at the right side, the function has a name. It's called myself. And this name I can only use inside the function itself. And if you look at the last line of the example on the right, this is illegal, right? Because I can't, the myself only exists inside the function. It's a function scoped a name, and I can't call the function with this name. But if I would debug it, I would say that the name of the function is myself, and it really helps us. And it's really common practice is to use named expressions and the name function. So you would always know how to read your call stacks. Next subject we have here is so I see we have some okay. I missed your answers from before, and I see here we have questions. Why not function call myself I? Let's see. Why not function call myself I? Yes. Cecile, I hope that I say the name correctly. You could use it. I just wanted to, I was talking here about expressions. What you're talking about is function declaration, right? You don't put the function inside a variable and you just call it. You can do that. In this example, I just wanted to show the differences between named function expressions and function expressions. If I wouldn't use the var call myself equals, it would be function declaration. It's just another example. So yeah, and when we use arrow functions, they are anonymous. You can debug it, right? But it's gonna be hard. I think there is a way to also give a name to arrow functions. But this is one of the downside of using arrow functions, because if you let's say have arrow function and you have many arrow functions in one function, and then you have inside it another call to another function, and then it's going to be confusing to read the call stack and understand. So yeah, next subject is we have by the way, I don't know if I said before, but we have like a 20-second delay of when I'm saying things and until you see it. This is why in some cases I'm going to see questions very late, but we will get it, don't worry. So next thing is immediately invoked function expression, or commonly used as IFI. So you're gonna probably think, why would I use a function that calls itself? And as you can see, what I do here is I have an open parenthesis before the function, and then I close it, and then I just call it with another open and closing parenthesis. So why do we do it? We do it because, as I said before, inside the function, all the variables inside are functionally scoped and locally scoped. And in many cases, we have many JavaScript files in one application, right? We don't have just like a main.js. We have many JavaScript, and they all have the same global scope. And in many cases, we're gonna assign, we're gonna have like in JavaScript 1, we're gonna have a variable called app, and in JavaScript 2, we're gonna have another variable called app, and we don't want it to be the same app. And when we use ifs, we can actually wrap the entire content of the JavaScript file as an IFI. And then everything inside is locally scoped, and the app that inside this function it doesn't exist outside of the function. As you can see, when I call here app, it's going to say that app is not defined. And it's like a way to be more secure with your code and make sure that no function, no JavaScript file override another thing. All right. So another concept we have in JavaScript is called hoisting. And this is very common, and it's pretty simple actually. Hoisting is the JavaScript behavior of, and I added moving declaration to the top. It doesn't really move it to the top, but it doesn't move it in the code, but it's, you can imagine like it does. So if you see the right side and the left side, so the JavaScript gonna read it the same, and it's gonna behave the same. Even when I have the var x at the top, and even when I have var x at the bottom, it's gonna be the same. This is a hoisting. So if I would write the left side, what JavaScript actually does, it's going when it's passing the JavaScript, when it's going over it, it's gonna see a var declaration for the first time, and it's gonna like put it at the top of that scope. And then the next time when the JavaScript actually runs, it already knows that there is a var x inside the document. So this is another example. But this time we're talking about functions and hoisting in functions. As I said before, we had functional declarations and function expressions. Declarations, as I said, as you see here in the first one, it's when I just started with the word function. An expression is when I put the function inside a variable. And hoisting is like putting all the declarations at the top. And declaration is everything that on the left of the equals. So if we saw in the earlier example, the var x equals 5, yes. So the var x is moving to the top. In this case, when we're using functions, and we have a little bird here that says that function definition hoisting only occurs for function declarations and not expressions, which means that the first function is going to be hoisted, and we can use, you can see here, we can use my function before we even declared it. But in the case of my function 2, the hoisting is only done on the left side. So my function 2 is only recognized as var my function 2. That's it. And when we call my function 2 before we actually put the function inside, since it's a function expression and non-declaration, it's going to say that my function 2 is not a function. All right. So I hope you understand the differences, and let's see with a pop quiz. So I have here var x equals 21, and then I have a function expression girl equals function, and then I log x, and then I declare another x, var x equals 20, and then I call girl. And I wonder if you can tell me what's going to be printed at the console. And you need to remember what we talked about. We have two things here. We have the function scope, and we have hoisting. Meanwhile, let's see, we have a question. How would you take advantage of hoisting? Well, usually you don't want to rely on hoisting when you write code. It's always better to declare a variable and then use it than not doing it other way around. Yes, so I see here many people say 20, 20, 20, 21. So none of you got it right. And why? Because when I call girl here, I start my function. And then when the function starts running, it's gonna do the same hoisting experience as I showed before. It's gonna go over for the first time on the content of the function. It's gonna be hoisting everything, and then it's gonna run it. And what's gonna be happening here is that girl function is called. It's gonna see var x. It's gonna be hoisting it, and it's gonna like moving var x to the top of the function, but it's gonna be undefined, right? When I just declare a variable without assigning value into it, it's gonna be undefined. And then I log it, and this x is undefined, and this is why we're gonna log undefined. Only after the log, I assign a value to the new locally scoped hoisted x, right? This is why we're gonna see undefined. I see Cecile. I think, yeah, you got it right. I'm gonna like both of your comments. And also Anonymous here also wrote it. Who are you, Anonymous? Okay. So next subject we're gonna talk about is var, let, and const, and the differences between. So we always had var in JavaScript, and we started to use let and const in 2015 when we had ES6. And so let's talk about let and const. So const is a variable that should not be changed. The name the name says it. It's something that should be constant and cannot be changed. And let is something that we can change. Now, they're both. What's the difference between var is that let and const are not hoisted. They don't have the same behavior as I showed before on var. And they also called block scope variable. And in the next example, I'm going to say what it means. Now, if you look at the left example, so I have here assignment of a value to x before I declared it. And since it's a let, another var, it's going to say that I cannot access x before I initialize it. And on the right side, we also have an arrow. Since it's a const, I cannot change the value of the const. And I have a const x equals 5, and that's it. I can't do x equals 3 later on. I have here a question: what is undefined? So when you declare a variable, and you have a variable, but you didn't put any value inside it, so it's undefined. It was not defined yet as a variable with a value. So what does it mean, block scope variable? So I'm sure you all wrote a for loop before, and it's a common practice to use let in the for loop. And why is that? Because let's see the left example, and I'm gonna ask you also here. I'm gonna also put the question: what's gonna be printed on the left side, and what's gonna be printed on the right side? And I'm gonna talk about it meanwhile. So on the left side, we have a var. And as we said, var is a globally scope or function scope, but it doesn't have a block scope. And scope is everything between two curly braces, right? So on the left side, the for loop gonna actually change the I value. And when we're gonna be printing I, it's gonna be 10. Because when we finish the for loop, we actually affected the same I that was declared before. When we look at the right side, we have a let. And let is block scope, and each iteration of the for loop is a block, right? And in each iteration, we're gonna have a different I. So when I declared I here, even though I had let I before, I'm not affecting this I. And when I'm gonna be printed it, it's gonna be still remain as 5 and nothing else. All right. So another pop quiz. And this one is a bit tricky. I'm gonna ask again, what's gonna be printed at the console? So I have here a for loop, right? One with the variable and one with the let. And in both of them, I'm doing a set timeout on a function that prints I. And I wonder if you can tell me what's going to be printed at the top and what's going to be printed at the second example. I'm going to give you, let's say, 20 seconds. All right, so I have a first answer from Roy. He say first 5 and second one 1 2 3 4 5 and not 1 2 3 4 5 but 0 to 4. But you actually correct, and let me explain why. So as we said before, this var, the first for loop, is global, and once we finish the for loop, which is probably faster than 1,000 milliseconds, the I was already changed to 5. And this is why when the set timeout is finished for all the 5 functions, the I is going to be the same. It's going to be 5. This is why it's going to be printing 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. Oh, I see many of you wrote something similar. On the second one, as I said, each for loop is another block, and it's going to have its own I. This is why this is the behavior that you probably wanted when you write this for loop. It's going to be printing 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And here is how we would make it work with var. We would have this function as an ify, which gets I as a parameter. And once we get it as a parameter, this function, which gets I as a parameter and then holds it as x. In this one, x is locally scoped, and it's gonna be whatever you gave it. So once you call the function with the I equals 0, so the x is gonna be also 0, and it's gonna be printing what we wanted. Roy, I will send you the prize later on. You can add me on LinkedIn, and I will. So there's a question: why ever use var instead of let and const? So first, not all websites supports ES6. ES6. Not all browsers support ES6. And but it's true that it's better to use let and const. But as we said before, var has its own advantages. It's globally scoped, and once you do a var in the global scope, you know that you can always use it whatever in the code, and you know that it's hoisted. So yeah, there are advantages and disadvantages for everything. And here we have another pop quiz, but I'm not going to wait until you answer. It's just like another example. So we have a const my object, and the question is what is correct and what is incorrect here. So I have here a const, which is an object. I said that I can't change my object, but I can change the properties inside. So the first one is okay. I can't I can't do the second thing. I can't reassign a value to my object, and I can't redeclare it. If it was a let, it was okay. If it was a var, it was okay, but I can't redeclare a const. And another pop quiz that you can think with yourself. So we have a my function, which, as we can see, it logs app and applet. Then it's assigning app and applet, and then it logs it again. So it's pretty much the same as we talked. We said that var is hoisted, let is not hoisted. This is why when we console log app at the beginning, it's gonna be undefined. And I'm going back to the girl example. Since it seems like a function, var is hoisted and it's gonna be printed undefined. Applet is gonna produce an error and we're gonna crash here. And then after we assign the values of Excel and Word, it's gonna be correct later on. All right, so now take a big breath because we're gonna dive into a subject that's most questions that I've seen on JavaScript is about what is this? Because in many cases we do this dot. We're not really sure why we're doing it because, I mean, it's obvious that this dot is, why do I need it? Why do I need to do this dot x if I know x is here? So what is this? So alone, when you just do this, it will always refer to the global scope. Inside a function, when we have a function, it will also refer to the global scope. But when we are in strict mode, and I want to remind you that in most cases we are in strict mode. When we do this dot in a function, it's going to be undefined. When we have a method, let's say as an object property, let's say I have an object obj, and inside I call this. So this is going to be the object itself. And when we're using this in events, like when I do on click, right, on a button, so this is gonna be the element that receives the event. It's gonna be the button, for example. And an important thing that you need to remember about this is that it doesn't matter where it was declared, but who or from where it was called. And now we're going to see some examples of what do I mean by saying that. So here is an example. We have here my function, which prints app, this app, and we have a var app in the global scope also, and we have a var word, which is an object that has an app by itself and also have my function. And on the first call, I call my function. And on the second one, I called word.my function. So remember when we talked about as an object property. So, and I remind you that we talked about it doesn't matter where it was declared, but who called it. So in the first one, I call my function from the global scope. And I have in the global scope a variable called app. This is why this.app is going to be Excel. When I doing word.my function, I'm actually calling my function from the word object. And the word object, when I do this, inside the word object, app is word. And this is why the second call is going to be printing word. And I see here some questions. So are global object and global scope same? Not really sure what you meant, but the global scope is where um, is the Windows scope, let's say, or the global scope is where all the global variables and functions are saved, let's say, and visible. And global objects are objects inside the global scope. All right, so another pop quiz. And I remind you that it doesn't matter where it was declared, but who called it. And here we have another example. We have Excel.myFunction, and we call my function from Excel. We have Word.myFunction, and we call it from Word. But mind here the trick that inside Word, we had my function, which is actually Excel.myFunction. All right, and it's a bit confusing. And then we call my function from the global scope. So I wonder if you will get the right answer here. And also look at the small squeezing bird at the bottom with the hint. So 10 more seconds if you want to print what you think gonna be printed at the console. Okay, so someone here wrote Excel Word PPT, which is correct, right? And I hope you didn't let the Excel.myFunction confuse you, because it doesn't matter where the function was declared. It doesn't matter that my function was declared inside Excel. And it doesn't matter that in Word, my function is actually a reference to Excel my function. It matters who called it. And in the second call, Word called it, and in the third call, the global scope called it. And this is why this.app is from the global scope. Another example that I'm going to show you here is that we have here my function, which has a local scope app variable app Excel, and it calls my function 2. And my function 2 is another global function that prints this.app. And then we have another app in the global scope, which is Word. And then what's gonna be happening when we call my function? So I'll give you 10 seconds to think about it. So what's going to be happening here is the bird pretty much say it all. Inside the function, as we said, this refers to the global scope. And it doesn't matter that my function is calling my function 2, and then the call stack, it doesn't matter here. The one that actually called my function and triggered it was the global scope. And this is why this.app gonna be Word and not Excel. All right. And I see here that some of you, Cecile, Julio, said that you think that the third one is going to be undefined or Excel in the previous example. Let me go back to this. And I hope you understand why it's going to be PBT. If no, feel free to ask. And here I have a pub quiz in extreme. It means that it's like really difficult, and I think it's pretty much covers the entire this subject. And I'm not gonna go over it. You can like do a print screen and think about it a bit. Don't type it to your debugger, just think about it and think what's gonna be printed at the console. And you can either send it later in the Q&A here, or add me LinkedIn and maybe send me the answer you think is gonna be printed here. And here we're gonna have a hint that arguments that a function gets are function one, callee, and length. All right. So do a print screen or go over the coding later on and think about it. And the next thing that also refers to the this is a method that called call and apply. So actually, call and apply are ways to call a function with a scope that you want to define yourself. So here I have a person one, and person one has a full name method, which just returns the first name plus last name. And let's say I want to use this function and not just recreate it every time I create a person. So what I can do, I just can do it like person one dot full name, which is a function, and call it while giving it the person two as a scope, as the this of this function is going to be person two, and what's it's going to be printing to me is this first name and this last name of person two, which is John Doe, and not of person one, which is Gayom Tov. So we have call and apply, which is a pretty much the same, but the only difference is the way they get parameters. You can search differences in Google and see what it means. And then we introduce another thing called bind. And binding is our way to say that we want to bind. And in this example, we want to bind model 2 as the scope or as the this of the getX function. And why is it different than call and apply? Call and apply it means call the function and do it right now, while binding is like it's a future binding for the rest of the application when it runs. So what it means here, it's pretty much the same. When I'm gonna log getX, it's gonna be going for model.getX, and since we binded it to model 2, the this.x is gonna be the x of model 2, which is 22. All right, and where we're gonna see it very often, if you wrote React. So in React, it's really common, the binding thing, right? Because in React, we have these components, which are scope, they have their own scope. And in many cases, we have buttons, and we want to, let's say I have a button to delete an image. So you can see the function, which has to use the this and set state. It has to use the this, and this is something that exists inside the component. And if I use the first example here, and I just call this.delete photo, so it actually, when inside the delete photo, the this is gonna be undefined. And I don't know if you remember when we said that inside a function, when we're using strict mode, this is undefined unless we binded it to another scope. This is why it's important in React, let's say, to bind the delete photo to the component itself. And once people click on the button, it's gonna be it's gonna start the delete photo function, but it already knows from the binding that when you do this inside the delete photo, it's gonna be the scope of the component, and this is and it's gonna be working. If you're gonna run the first example that I show here with only this delete photo without binding, it's gonna say that set state is not defined because this is gonna be an empty object. All right, so this is not to do, and oops, and the second one is to do. So another pop quiz, and since we pretty much running out of time, I'm gonna also go over it myself. So we have here try get x, which is a function that was declared inside a module, inside Const called module. And when I try to call it from the global scope, it's gonna be searching for x in the global scope, and x is not defined in the global scope. This is why the first call is gonna be producing undefined. While after binding the function to the model itself, when I'm printing it, it's gonna be searching inside the model. It's gonna find x, and this is why get x gonna be printing 42. All right. So we have, I think, 3 more, but small subjects. The first one is the new keyword. So what happens when you add new before a function? So 3 things are happening. First one, JavaScript creates a blank plain JavaScript object. You can imagine it as a plain JSON or plain text, right? Empty. And then the constructor, or let's say the content of this function, is going to be running when you use this, is going to be using the new blank object that was created in stage 1. And then when it finishes, it returns this as the function return, unless you return something else. But if you see my example here, I call my function with the new. So it's gonna create a new blank JavaScript object. It's gonna that word gonna be word. And when I'm printing it, so the first this.app is gonna be undefined, right? Because when I added the new keyword, I actually created the blank scope for the function, and it doesn't recognize anything else when I do this.app. It doesn't recognize the global scope. This.word is okay because it's word. Now, if I go to a second example, and let's say I remove the this, so what you think gonna be printed here? And this is a tricky thing, but it's really important to understand differences when you use the new keyword. And so we have the this.app, and we have just word without this. I'll give you a few more seconds to answer. Okay, so I can see a few answers here. So actually, what's going to be printed is, as we said before, the this.app didn't change. It's still undefined. But when we have the new keyword and we are not using this, it's going to be looking, it's going to be search in the global scope. So when we use new, we actually have to use the this in order it to understand that it's from this new object scope. Once we removed it, it's going to be searching in the global scope, and word, as you can see, does not exist in the global scope. And this is why it's going to be printing undefined, undefined. All right, it was a bit tricky. Feel free, as I said before, to ask any questions you would like. One subject before the last one is prototypes. So prototypes is actually like a way of JavaScript to have objects, like object-oriented inheritance and stuff like that. All JavaScript objects have actually inherent properties from prototypes. So if we use date, for example, the date object in JavaScript, it inherits from date.prototype. If we add a new array, so it inherits from array.prototype. And if we could just create a plain object or a function, say, it inherits from object.prototype. And object.prototype has like a very common functions like toString, have a constructor and stuff like that. So if you can see here, I declared a function, which is also an object, right, of a person. And I'm just like assigning variables inside. And I can do person.prototype.name and actually add a function to the prototype of persons. And let's say I want to create another person. So I would use the same function like I did var me, which is a new person guy on top. I can do another var someone else with other properties. But since I added the function to the prototype, it will always be existing for the future. So this is why I can do me.name. I can do, and then I can, as I said, create another person and do also another person.name, and it will work for the same scope that this person was created on. And here we have some examples of we mentioned arrow functions and functions before. So here we have a const a, which is an arrow function, and we have a function b, which is an empty function. So if I do type of a, it's a function, and also type of b. And also if I search for the prototype of a and b, so they both have the prototype of a function. The only difference here is then when we do a.prototype and we search for the prototype, so when we use an arrow function, we don't have we can't access the prototype. And while we do b, which is a normal function declaration, it would have a constructor and have a proto object and whatever else you would see in a prototype. All right, so this is also another difference between arrow function and regular function. And I think we are at the last subject we have for today, which is closure. So in closure actually make it possible for functions to have a private variable, right? If you work with Java or C# or other object-oriented languages, you know that we have types and we have private variables, and then we have public getters and setters, right? And here is an example of how you can use it, because in many cases I want to create a variable, let's say counter, but I don't want anyone from outside the function to change counter. I don't want anyone to say it like, let's say counter equals -1 or whatever. I want people to only use the function, the wrapper function that I added, and I don't want them to access anything else. Here, for example, I create an add function, which actually holds a counter, which is the counter here, the var counter is a private variable, you can say, and it uses the closure. And I actually, what I'm returning for the end function is actually just increasing the counter by 1, and then I return it. So the only way to access counter is by using the wrapper function that I did. This is why I can call add, and then it's going to be printing 3 to the log. I can't do counter equals 0 and then set it to whatever value I want. All right, so here is another last pop quiz. I'm also not gonna go over it, and you can also consider it as a challenge. We have here a function called what do I do, and you need to figure out what do I do actually does. What it does, I'm not gonna tell you what it does, but what we can see here is that it actually gets a function as an argument. It has a counter, and as we said, we use closure here, and then it's returning the function with like some if statement. And what I do here is that I call what do I do? I bring it, I pass it a function as a parameter, and then I call the function 2 times. So wonder if you could figure out what it means. That's it for me. As I said, you can add me a LinkedIn or send me a message if you have any more questions. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you have any comments, if you think that you want to hear more about other subjects. Also, as part of the reactor, if you can fill out a survey, I would really appreciate it. You can go to aka.ms/reactor/survey and use the code 12712 and give your feedback. What do you like? What did you like? If you want to hear more. There are many sessions of the reactor in Tel Aviv. You can check them all out in the different websites, and the recording, I know many of you asked, the recording will be available also on the YouTube channel of the Microsoft Reactor. Thank you very much for joining.